Hello everybody! So a long time ago I promised you guys a palette collection video, and that's exactly what I have today. So instead of splitting it up between large palettes and small palettes, this is just all of my palettes. So this is going to be a very long video, so make sure you're settled in, get comfortable, and I will go through all of the palettes I have. I'm going to try and stick alphabetically by brand. So let's start with some Anastasia. Alright, the Modern Renaissance palette. I think everybody has or wants this palette. It is quite beautiful. This is my comfort zone in a palette. I reach for these shades as often as I can, and oftentimes if you are seeing me wearing these sort of tones in a video, it's because I'm wearing this palette. I really love oranges and reds and pinks, and I love golds. I just really love warm eyeshadows, especially ones that lean sort of orangey, because I find that they really make my blue eyes pop. So, Modern Renaissance. I also have the Artist palette, but I've depotted it. So I've got the single shadows sort of split up between my various sized Z palettes. So I will include a picture of the Artist palette so you guys can see what it looks like whole, and I will sort of mention reference my Z palettes as we go through. This is just a mishmash of like some single shades. I've got a couple of other palettes in here, and then all these little square ones that are in here are from the Artist palette. So I have a large Z palette that's got colors, and I've got one that's more dark tones, and I do have one shadow from the Artist palette that's in that. And then I have just yet another miscellaneous little Z palette, which is another shade from the Artist palette. And then I have a couple of Anastasia singles, and I wasn't quite sure if I was going to include singles in this video because it's a palette video, but I do have some pretty substantial palettes that I made, like the MAC palettes, and then I decided to include like Makeup Geek. So I figured, because I'm also including my Z palettes because of things that I've depotted, I thought I would just mention my Anastasia shadows. I have 10 of them. I have the little Anastasia case in here, so I've got, you know, some more of those like similar shades. It's no surprise. The shades I have really wouldn't come as much of a surprise to anybody. This is an old MAC quad. I just had this sitting around here when I didn't have enough space for my Anastasia shadows, so I just stuck them in here. They don't stay because MAC is magnetized differently, so I need to get another Z palette to put some of my Anastasia shadows. And then I have two neutral Anastasia singles in there. So I just thought that I would mention them because I really do like Anastasia, and I have, you know, a substantial amount, not a ton. There's a lot of Anastasia shadows, but I do have a few. So those are my Anastasia. I have one Becca palette. This is the Becca Ombré Rouge palette. I will include a picture of what it looks like complete, brand new, and pretty. My palette is part of my Pan That Palette mini edition, so no spoilers here, guys. You're gonna have to check out those videos to see my progress on the palettes that I'm panning. I have another palette that I put together myself. This is from Buxom. So you guys might have seen these floating around before. They come pre-made, and you can also make them yourself. So I thought this was really cool, and any opportunity I have to like customize things, I love that. So I didn't put anything together cohesive in this set. So it's pretty neat. This slides out, and you can pop out the different shadows as you see fit. It has a pretty large mirror. As I said, I didn't do anything cohesive here. I just have a bunch of shadows that appealed to me. I only have one matte shade. It's this light peachy shade. I really love duochrome shades. This is No Faux, and there's a couple of shadows that exist that are very similar to this. This shadow is very beautiful. It's very similar to a lot of other things. I believe Lounge from Urban Decay, Club from MAC, I think that's what they're called. And this one's No Faux, so it's duochrome. I love duochrome shadows. I wish there was more of them around in the world. Very pretty. And I like the formula of these Buxom shadows. I just don't reach for it that often. So that brings us to Kat Von D. I do have the Star Studded palette, which is the old holiday palette. I did have some failed attempts at depotting this, which is why I'm holding it so awkwardly. There's one shadow that turned almost completely to dust, and that was the orange shade called Mandala, and I really like it, and I actually still will occasionally use it. I just have a fear of repressing things, and I don't want to ruin things anymore. So these shadows aren't actually that bad. This palette got like completely destroyed in reviews, and so then Kat Von D dropped the price. I assume it's Kat Von D. It was sold by Sephora, and then the price was slashed in half, and that's when I got it, when it was really on sale. And I kind of regretted it because everyone else said it was so bad, but I actually really liked it and used it for a long time until I crushed that shadow, and then it just sort of, and it's so bulky that it was really inconvenient to use. So I need to finish that at some point, or decide to get rid of it, or try and depot more shadows so that I could use it. Another bulky palette, but one of my all-time favorites, is the Mi Vida Loca palette. This was the holiday palette from last year, and I think a lot of people wanted this, and I love this palette so much. It doesn't look like it's used that much, but I've actually used it quite a bit. Really, I absolutely love this. I just wish it was packaged better because it's so pretty. The color wheel is gorgeous. Of course, I reach for these the most. I think this is my most used shadow right there. That's harpsichord, and there's no, I mean, it's no surprise that was the first shadow that I dug into once I got the palette. These are the shades that I'm really, really drawn to. And I have the Shade and Light Contour Quad in Sage. This is again part of my Pan That Palette mini, so it is a picture of what it looks like inside, but no spoilers. I have the Lime Crime Venus palette. See some similarities here, like I said with the Modern Renaissance palette. I really love these shades, and I really like this palette a lot. And yes, there's a lot of similarities between the Venus palette and the Modern Renaissance palette, but there's things that I like about this palette a lot that makes it worth it outside of the Modern Renaissance. This is a palette that I would bring travel, and I have. The one time I have gone anywhere recently, this is a palette I brought with me because it's small, it's compact, and it's convenient, and I find it really easy to use and to create beautiful, dramatic eye looks. Absolutely love the quality of this, and I really have my eye on the Venus 2 palette because it has a little bit more diversity in shades, and I do really love the pigmentation and the quality of these shades. It's supposed to be like matte, but it ain't. It's not matte. There's a bunch of these shadows that do have glitter and shimmer in it, and you can't deny that. You really can't. But I do think that this is beautiful. That shell there, that pink shade. There's this shade here called Aura, which is like this beautiful sort of lid shade. It's a little bit too dark for me to use as a highlight color, but I like to use it as a lid shade or do like a halo eye with like Muse or even Icon, and then with that shade in the middle. So nice. I have one Lorac palette, and I know a lot of people are probably like, say what? Because I'm always talking about how I can't get Lorac. I bought this in the States quite a few years ago now, and this is the Afterglow palette. Yes, it's the Afterglow eyeshadow palette, and so this is very pretty, and I have not used it very much, which is a shame because it's beautiful. Again, the few times I've used it, I've reached for these like gold and bronze shades the most, and then I've used these, the brown and the pink as well. I got this one because it really intrigued me, and I wanted to try Lorac eyeshadows, and so when I was in an Ulta in the States, lost my mind, and I would have bought the Pro 2 palette instead, but it hadn't come out yet because when I was there it was about like a week or two before the Pro palette was supposed to come out. So I knew it existed, but I could not buy it yet, and the Pro one, the original Pro palette, did not interest me. I just was not interested in those shades at that time. Still really am not interested in it. I really do like the look of the Pro 2, but this one, it's nice. Some of the shadows are a little bit difficult to work with. It's getting a little bit old, and I'll be trying to work on this in some capacity next year for sure. Okay, so MAC shadows. The first thing I have here is this little guy that has 9 shadows, and this is the Burgundy ×9. I love the ×9 palettes. I want all of them. Of course, I don't have all of them because that would be crazy. I have way too many eyeshadows as it is, but I could not resist this one because of these shades. Burgundy. This shade is my most used shade, and this is Honey Lust, and this is actually, I believe, a permanent shade, and I love it so much. Obsessed with that shade. All of these shades are really, really beautiful, and I love the idea of this because they're so small. They're compared to the full sizes of the MAC pans, which I will show you in a minute here, but I think this is such a great idea because you get so much variety and you don't have to commit to the full size of the pan. So I love the ×9. I would definitely get more of these if it made sense for me to do so. I really want to use this one more. I really do love MAC eyeshadows. I find that they're really easy to work with, and I love that they have a variety of finishes. Now for the rest of my MAC, I have 2 pre-made palettes and 2 custom palettes. So I have 2 of the ×15 palettes. So these are all full-size shadows, but the difference is they look like the regular MAC palettes, but you can't actually remove these. Well, at least easily. They're not meant to be replaceable. This is just, it's meant to just be a palette as it is. This is the Warm Neutral palette. I actually did a tutorial back in the day using this palette and using like this shade. It was the first time I think I had worn false eyelashes on camera and people like lost their minds, and I love that because I love the way everything looks. So some of these shadows are permanent and some of them are just exclusive to this palette. And I like this. I like that a lot. The quality of these shadows are exactly the same as the regular ones that you buy individually, in my opinion. I also have the cool version. This is the cool neutral, so ×15. Same again, some of these shadows aren't really cool toned, but some of them are. And when I'm looking for something more cool toned, I like to reach for some of these neutrals to help build it. I haven't really used these ones on this side very often. Not a lot of the ones that have some are like a satin finish. I haven't really used those that much. Should use them a little bit more. I definitely have an idea of something that I would like to do in 2017, but I'm not gonna sway you guys one way or the other. I want to hear what you guys think, what you guys honestly would like to see me do next year. So that's the cool neutral palette. And then because I want to mention my custom palettes, I have 2 ×15 palettes that are custom. So this is just like a mishmash one. This is a bunch of colors. You can see that sort of middle row and even part of the top row is very typical of me. And then these are some other shades. A lot of them are matte. And I am not super happy with the way that this palette looks right now because it's such a mishmash. I kind of want to have more of like this warm, I want to have more like a warm and a cool toned, but I just have a mishmash of colors in one of my custom palettes. And the other palette is my neutral palette, and I just keep turning it upside around. But this is my custom palette, and I am very proud of this guy. I love the way that this looks so much. This is some of my favorite shadows, some of my all-time favorites, some of the things that like I would just reach for all the time if I could. Like, I really love these a lot. If anybody wants more information or more details on like my custom MAC palette or palettes, just let me know. I'd be more than happy to do that for you guys. But this is beautiful and one of my favorite things in my makeup collection. Quickly gonna mention my Makeup Geek custom palette. I do have a couple other Makeup Geek singles in my Z palette. This is just a Z palette that I threw together with some favorite Makeup Geek shades. Again, can you see a theme here of my preferences? Yes, I have very, very strong preferences when it comes to my eye makeup. My Pure Soul Mattes palette, this is in my Pan That Palette mini as well. That's what it looks like. I have one little Smashbox palette. This is the Glam Femme Photo Op eyeshadow palette. So this I got in a set a couple years ago. One of these shades is depotted in my Z palette. But it's kind of like a pretty boring neutral palette. I've only used it a couple times. I wasn't overly impressed with it, and which is why I do not have any more Smashbox shadows. I have 3 of the old Stila palettes, which no longer exist. They've replaced them. I don't have any of the new ones. I have the In The Know palette, which is a little beat up right now. One of the shades is also depotted, but you probably can't even tell because it's the black shade. And I really like this one, especially this orange shade. Of course I do. This is the palette that really sort of introduced me to oranges, and I started using it because of this thing. And this is a really good neutral palette. I really like the way that these were laid out, even if they are sort of like feel kind of cheap because of the cardboard packaging. I still think that they're really good shadows, and I do not regret having them at all. I have the In The Moment one, which is the purple one, which I haven't used that much. I got them when they were on sale on the Sephora website, and I should use these more, basically, is what this is telling me. But I don't like that this one doesn't have a mirror, so that kind of discourages me from using it, because I like to kind of pick something up and like step away from my makeup area and vanity, and just, I don't like to have to put it down somewhere and then work from there. I like to have everything all in once. So I like that it has a little quote there that says cherish the beauty of the moment, but I would much rather have a mirror than a quote. And I have the Stila In The Light palette, which I almost panned this last year, and I'm glad I didn't, because I think I really would have been bored to death. It is very pretty and it's very neutral. My second to last category, I have my Too Faced palettes. And I actually have 2 Too Faced palettes because I'm not a huge fan of Too Faced eyeshadows. Don't kill me. But I just sometimes find that they're kind of powdery. These 2 ones that I have, I actually really like though. I have the Semi Sweet palette. Chocolate goodness. Smells so good. This is what my palette looks like. I've hit pan on a couple of shades in here. I don't have an issue with too much powderiness, which I've had with some Too Faced palettes in the past, and I had some like the holiday collections or like limited edition ones that I've decluttered over the last couple of years. And I have the Sweet Peach palette. I do. I know. I love that peach scent. I love this palette. I want to use it more. I was gonna say, I really like Sorry Yum. Bet you guys couldn't tell that. Of course I have this palette because look at these tones. Look at this. I actually really like this green in here. Bless her heart. I've worn this a few times. I know it was super trendy, but I jumped on it and no regrets. So I have a lot of eyeshadow, but we ain't done yet. I got Urban Decay eyeshadow, and Urban Decay eyeshadow, I think I have more Urban Decay than I have of all of the things I just showed. So let's dive into the Urban Decay world, shall we? I have the Naked Basics palette. I've actually completely finished this palette. This is a repurchase. That's how much I like this. This is a fantastic set of neutral shades. And if I repurchased it after finishing it, that does tell you something. Because how often do people finish an eyeshadow palette in general, and how often do people finish something and then repurchase it? So Naked Basics is a staple for me. And the Naked 2 Basics Cool Toned. Did not like this at first. I have hit pan on all of these shades because this was in my Pan That Palette Mini, but I've since taken it out because I hit my goal. Literally hit it. And I really like this a lot shade-wise. I find that my palette is very, very powdery. So I have a ton of fallout whenever I use this. Even with the really light shades, it's just Fallout City. So I'm so torn because I love the colors, and I think that these are such beautiful cool tone shades that I haven't come across in other brands as of yet. So I want to love it, but I just can't. So I want to finish this one up and then kind of go in store and like swatch and see if the quality is better. If the quality can be as good as the Naked Basics palette, like they should quality wise be the same, then I'll be very, very happy. I have the Smoked palette, Zippos. This is actually where my YouTube name and all my social media names came from. Before I even really wore smoky eyeshadows. It's because I had this, because I thought if by having it, I would start to try and do smoky eyeshadow looks. And when I was coming up with a name for my YouTube channel, I had a bunch of different ideas that were all taken. And I saw this sitting there, smoked, and I was like, smoked something. And that's when I was like, well, it's not like I'm a smoked shadow kind of girl. And I was like, oh, smoked shadow. That's actually kind of cool. And then that was taken. And then I was like, well, what about shadow smoked? So that's what I am, shadow smoked. So this is kind of a boring palette, you know. It is kind of boring. There's a little bit too much shimmer in here that really kind of turned me off when I was first trying to do a smoky eye. It just left me with like so much fallout and like raccoon eyes. So I have not gone back and really used this much since I have been practicing and improving my techniques more, so maybe I should, because maybe I would like it. I just found that a lot of these shades, like there's a beautiful purple and a blue and a green that I think would make really good shades, but I've had so much better luck with other shadows, especially matte shadows, getting that sort of colored smoky eye, that I just haven't been drawn back to this yet. So I don't know what's gonna happen with this thing. We'll see. I have this guy. I think we've seen this floating around a few times. I love this. It's sequins. This is beat up. I will tell you, this is so beat up. My shadow is like super dirty. One shadow has been depotted. It's in my Z palette, so it does still exist, but this is some really bright, cool colors. I've used these a few times. I really like Honey. The fishnet shade that I depotted, I actually have used quite a bit. I haven't reached for this too much. This was like on sale Sephora like Black Friday, I think, a few years ago, and that's when I picked it up for like 10 bucks Canadian, so I couldn't say no to that. And I like Urban Decay shadows, all of them. I have the Pulp Fiction palette, even though I do not like the movie Pulp Fiction. I just liked the eyeshadow because I'm an Urban Decay junkie and I've been trying to cut back. You'll notice I don't have a whole lot of the new Urban Decay stuff. But one of these has been deposited to my Z palette. This formula though, I'm so glad I got this because the formula of these shadows is insane. They are so creamy and so buttery, and I think anybody who has ever had this palette and has tried other Urban Decay shadows say the same thing. It's just like the quality of this is outstanding. Usually limited edition products and like collabs and stuff, the quality isn't always as good. This is better, and I wish that they had consistency and that all of the shadows and all of their future palettes were like this, because I would probably then have all of them. So no, maybe it's a good thing that they're not like this, but this is really good, so I'm glad I have that. Probably my one regret here is the Naked on the Run. This had a combination of things in it: the mascara, lip gloss, and eyeliner. I still have the eyeliner. The lip gloss I got rid of because I don't wear lip gloss, and the mascara I used. I haven't used this very often. I got it for the eyeshadows and I didn't use it very much, and it was sort of a letdown, and I almost returned it, but then I was like, I was really in the midst, in the deepest, darkest part of my Urban Decay obsession, where I was like, I need to have everything. So I was like, I can't betray Urban Decay, I can't return it. And I probably really should have returned it. I wish I kind of did, because I did not get much use out of this at all. So I want to finish this at some point because this is just so bulky. It takes up so much space. I'm never going to fill in the compartments and use this to travel with. Like, I'm just not. I'm never going to use this. This bronzer is way too orange. This blusher is way too pink. Like, the highlighter is nice, but I like highlighter you can see from space. This is more like a, I will use this a little bit on my eyes thing. So pretty much the one palette regret I have. I have the Gwen Stefani eyeshadow palette. I wasn't going to get this, I wasn't going to get it, and then decided I really wanted it, and I probably shouldn't have got it. This shadow actually is loose, like the glue must have came out of the palette, so it's fallen out a few times and finally it broke, so it's a little damaged. That one and Harajuku, the pink one, they're both loose, so they fall out all the time, but I like these a lot. This matte shade here, Punk, like Punk and Zone and Anaheim, like those like matte shades really drew me to this palette. I don't really use like I use Pop sometimes when I use this palette. I don't really use these like pops of color really very often. I mostly stick with like the top two rows when I use this palette. It's a really nice looking palette. I like the size of it. I wouldn't mind if more Urban Decay palettes looked like this. The Electric palette. This has been discontinued and this breaks my heart. I don't want to buy replacement because I'm like, I have so much of it left. I haven't even hit pan on any of the shades. Like, I'm really, really close to hitting pan on Freak, but I mean, I don't need a replacement, but again, I love how pigmented these are because they are pigments, and this really got me into colors and kind of helped push me out of my comfort zone a little bit, playing around with these things. I'm sad it's discontinued, but I hope Urban Decay comes out with like an electric palette too So you guys might know or may not know that I finished the original Naked palette last year. So I do not have that one, did not repurchase it, did not like it very much. I do have a couple of the other Naked palettes. I did completely depot Naked 2, so that's in my Z palette. I have Naked 3, which I love, and I've hit pan on a few of these shades. This is probably my favorite of all the Naked palettes because I love these pinkish tones a lot. Some of these shadows are kind of, I don't really use a lot of these dark ones for that reason. They're just, I haven't found a way to kind of make them work for me yet. And some of these ones that are really glittery, you have to use wet or else they just look terrible. So that's kind of the downside of it, but overall I like the shades in this one. And I have the Naked Smoky palette because of course I do. And I really have not used this palette very much either. I love Dirty Sweet though. Love Dirty Sweet. I'm a big half-baked person. That's in the Naked 2 and in the original Naked palette. I got it because I felt like I had to get it, not because I necessarily knew I was going to use it so much. So some minor regrets there, but I think I can get some more use out of this, and I mean the quality is still really good. And the last palettes I have here are my Vice palettes. So the Vice LTD I am panning. You guys will have to wait and see my update to see what the palette looks like currently, but this is what it looks like when it was brand new. I have the Vice 2 palette. I never got the Vice 1 because I wasn't into makeup at the time, and so there you have it. That's what the Vice 2 looks like. I have the Vice 3 palette, which is one of my favorites in terms of color schemes, but especially because of like that row right there. I've hit pan on Sonic and I've hit pan on Lucky, so the pink and the gold, no surprise there. I have the Vice 4 palette. Controversial palette that a lot of people seem to not like very much, so I really like that shade and that shade. I haven't used a lot of these. I do find that the quality is not that bad though. People have talked a lot of smack about it, but you know, I think it's pretty. That's C Note. The amount of progress I have on this palette is like not good because I've been focusing on like panning things. So I mean that's Grasshopper. Like the green shades in here are beautiful. Flame is one of those like glittery shades that just benefits more from being used wet, but I still think it's beautiful. I've used that one a few times, and then there's that matte shade Bitter, which is gorgeous. So I do think that there's a lot of good qualities about the Vice 4. And I have the Vice LTD Reloaded palette. So this guy, again, beautiful collection of eyeshadows here. Love them very much. So I told you guys this was going to be a long one, but that is all of my palettes. If you guys would like to see any other collection videos, let me know because I was thinking about doing them anyway, but I'd be interested to hear if you guys would like to see that. Also, I want to hear from you guys as to what you would like to see me pan in 2017. My plan as of right now is to focus on a large-ish palette and then also try and hit pan on as many additional shadows as possible. I'll get into more details at a later time, but I really want to hear from you guys as to what of these things maybe sparked your interest that you would like to see me finish. So let me know. I'm looking forward to hearing from you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and I hope I will see you in my next video. Bye.